You know, it's almost a cultural touchstone now, Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk about schools killing creativity. 77 million views.
Wow.
That's not just a lot of clicks, it signals a real nerve he touched, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The idea that the very system designed to educate us might be stifling something as vital as our creative spark. That's the core of what we're digging into today.
It certainly is. And it's more than just a popular opinion. It's a question that researchers across numerous fields have been grappling with for decades.
Hmm.
What's compelling is the sheer breadth of scientific inquiry dedicated to understanding how education and creativity intersect, sometimes harmoniously, sometimes, well, not so much.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've sifted through a mountain of that research for you.
Yeah.
We're not relying on gut feelings here.
Right.
Our exploration is grounded in a comprehensive review titled Linking Disparate Strands, a critical review of the relationship between creativity and education, published just last November in the Educational Psychology Review. So we're looking at the very latest scientific understanding.
Precisely. Our aim is to dissect this intricate relationship, offering you more than just a simple yes or no answer to whether schools hinder creativity.
Yeah, it's never that simple, is it?
Never. We want to explore the nuances, the different angles the research takes, and ultimately provide you with some truly insightful takeaways that might shift how you view your own educational journey or that of others.
Okay, so before we dive into whether schools are the villain or the hero of the creativity story, let's make sure we're all on the same page. When these researchers talk about creativity, what are they really getting at?
That's a fundamental question.
Hmm.
While creativity can be defined in various ways, a widely accepted definition within the research community is the ability to generate ideas that are both novel, original, or new, and useful.
Novel and useful.
Useful meaning, appropriate or valuable in a given context. And to study this, much of the focus has been on two key cognitive processes: divergent thinking and convergent thinking.
Divergent and convergent thinking. Could you maybe unpack those two for us a little?
Sure. Think of divergent thinking as the brainstorming engine of your mind. It's the capacity to generate a wide array of different ideas, potential solutions, or possibilities.
Right, like spreading out the net.
Exactly. It involves thinking that branches out in multiple directions, characterized by fluency, generating many ideas, flexibility, shifting perspectives, easily originality, coming up with unique ideas, and elaboration, developing ideas in detail.
Gotcha. And convergent.
Convergent thinking, conversely, is about narrowing down those possibilities to arrive at the single best or most correct solution. It involves logic, accuracy, and the ability to evaluate and select the most effective option.
Right, so divergent is all about generating a wide net of possibilities, and convergent is about focusing in on the best catch.
You got it. And what's particularly noteworthy is that while both types of thinking are crucial for bringing a creative idea to life, I
Hmm.
mean, you need both to imagine something new and to refine it into something practical. The bulk of educational research on creativity has historically centered on divergent thinking. It's often used as a primary indicator of overall creative potential, even though that's really only one piece of the puzzle.
That's a fascinating point. So, with this understanding of creativity in mind, let's tackle the big question. How does school, in all its forms, impact it? One of the first areas the research explores is the connection between how creative kids are and, well, how well they perform academically.
Yes, and this is where some interesting patterns emerge. A significant meta-analysis, this synthesized findings from over 120 studies, revealed a modest but positive overall relationship between creativity, primarily measured through divergent thinking tasks, and academic achievement.
Okay, so the general trend suggests that students who show higher levels of creativity tend to perform somewhat better in their studies. Is that fair?
That appears to be the case, yes. What's particularly interesting is that this connection was stronger when creativity was assessed using objective tasks, those psychometric tests designed to measure specific cognitive abilities,
Right.
rather than relying on student self-reports of their own creativity. And furthermore, the link was also more pronounced when academic achievement was measured through standardized tests, like those in math or spelling, compared to broader measures like overall grades.
Huh. That makes you wonder if those standardized tests tap into some of the underlying cognitive skills that also contribute to divergent thinking, like, I don't know, flexible problem solving.
It's a plausible interpretation. The researcher suggested that those very skills inherent in divergent thinking, the ability to think flexibly and come up with multiple approaches, might indeed be beneficial for learning and processing new academic material. particularly when facing structured problems.
Okay.
There's also evidence linking creativity to executive functions like attention and cognitive control, which are clearly vital for academic success.
And this isn't just a small, barely noticeable link, is it? I seem to remember reading about a more recent study out of Australia that showed a pretty significant connection.
You're right to bring that up. A recent Australian study focusing on older students in the 15 to 18 age range found that creativity, measured by both standardized tests and self-assessments, accounted for a substantial portion, around 18% of their performance on standardized academic assessments.
Wow, 18%.
Yeah, and this was even after accounting for personality traits and prior academic performance, like GPA. That suggests creativity isn't just some side benefit. It appears to be a meaningful contributor to academic outcomes.
But then the picture gets a bit murkier, doesn't it? Because we also saw some research suggesting maybe a weaker relationship, or even the idea that individuals feel more creative outside of school.
Precisely. There are findings that introduce some complexity here. For instance, a study involving Spanish high school students found a relatively weak relationship between divergent thinking, measured by a common creativity test, and their academic grades. However, they did find stronger links with other, less conventional measures of divergent thinking, which really highlights the importance of how we're defining and assessing this multifaceted ability. That knows how you measure it.
Right, right. And then there was that study with university students in Turkey.
hmm
What did that reveal?
Oh, yes. That study found that the university students, across most areas of life actually, rated themselves as being more creative in their activities outside of school compared to their experiences within the academic setting.
Hmm.
The one exception was in science and technology. The researchers speculated that factors within the school environment, perhaps administrative pressures, large class sizes, might not optimally support the individual work and independence that can foster creative skill development.
Which definitely prompts the question of whether those same environmental factors and student perceptions might be at play in earlier stages of education too. Something to think about.
Absolutely. The dynamics of the educational environment evolve significantly as students progress. And what's also worth noting is that while our conversation so far has largely focused on divergent thinking, the research on the relationship between convergent thinking, that ability to pinpoint the best solution, and academic achievement is, well, surprisingly less extensive.
Which seems almost counterintuitive, doesn't it? Given how many school tasks, particularly in subjects like math and science, hinge on finding the correct answer through focused, logical reasoning.
Exactly. While divergent thinking might help you explore different approaches to a problem, it's often convergent thinking that allows you to select the most effective strategy and arrive at the accurate solution.
Makes sense.
Interestingly, a Dutch study with younger children found a positive link between strong verbal convergent thinking skills and better performance on both single and multi-solution math problems.
Okay.
Their interpretation was that these types of math problems often involve applying specific logical steps and techniques, skills closely aligned with convergent thinking.
That makes a lot of sense. And there was also a study from China that looked at both convergent and divergent thinking in relation to academic performance.
Yes, that study with Chinese high school students used self-report questionnaires to assess both convergent and divergent thinking, and then looked at their association with exam performance. They found a positive association for both types of thinking.
Uh-huh.
Interestingly, the effect of convergent thinking on exam scores appeared to be stronger, particularly for students who are sort of in the middle range of academic achievement.
Hmm.
However, the researchers themselves cautioned that relying on self-reported measures might introduce some biases, so the findings need to be interpreted with that in mind. Self-reports can be tricky.
Definitely. So if we try to synthesize all of this, it seems there is a connection between creativity and how well students do in school, but it's not a straightforward equation. The specific aspects of creativity we're measuring, how we're measuring them, the type of academic achievement, it all seems to influence that relationship.
That's a very astute way to summarize it. It underscores the multifaceted nature of both creativity and academic success, and how their interplay is still being actively investigated. It's complex.
Now, let's pivot a bit and consider the actual day-to-day experiences within schools and classrooms, because a core argument of that whole schools kill creativity narrative is that the typical classroom environment just isn't set up to foster creative thought.
That's a valid concern for sure. The image of rows of desks, structured lessons, emphasis on conformity, it doesn't immediately screen creativity hotspot, does it?
Not really, no.
However, some research actually offers a more nuanced perspective. It suggests that certain aspects of the school environment and specific teaching methodologies can indeed support the development of creative skills.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm curious. What kinds of environmental factors and teaching approaches are we talking about?
Well, a comprehensive review identified several key pedagogical features. In terms of the physical learning space, having flexible indoor and outdoor areas equipped with diverse materials and resources that children can explore and use imaginatively seems to be beneficial.
Right, giving them stuff to play with, basically.
Pretty much. And regarding classroom activities, engaging students in novel, diverse, even real-world tasks that encourage the use of varied materials and technologies can promote creative expression. Furthermore, incorporating play-based learning approaches, particularly in younger years, has also been linked to enhanced creativity.
That resonates. Giving kids the physical and intellectual space to explore and experiment sounds pretty fundamental for nurturing new ideas. What about the social dynamics, like working together?
That's another important piece of the puzzle. Recent research has highlighted the positive impact of peer collaboration on divergent thinking.
Ah, interesting.
A Spanish study, for example, found that students who engaged in collaborative reading and writing tasks over a period of time showed significant gains in their divergent thinking abilities compared to those who worked on the same tasks individually, more traditionally.
So bouncing ideas off each other actually helps.
It appears so. The process of exchanging ideas, discussing different perspectives, collectively evaluating concepts that can really stimulate that divergent thinking capacity.
And it's not just about physical spaces and group activities, right? I recall reading something about visual tools like mind mapping and also the importance of teacher development.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Spot on. A study conducted in Taiwan found that students who utilize mind mapping techniques in a digital environment to design and create their coursework demonstrated higher levels of divergent thinking compared to those who didn't use that visual strategy.
Huh.
And yes, research has shown that providing teachers with professional development specifically focused on creative teaching methodologies can lead to an increase in their students' self-reported creativity over time.
That's an encouraging finding. It suggests that equipping teachers with the right skills and understanding can have a tangible impact on their students' creative development, or at least how they see it.
It does seem that way.
Were there any specific classroom interventions that stood out in terms of their effectiveness in actually boosting creativity scores?
Yes, several targeted interventions have shown promising results. A program called Learn to Think, implemented in China, which actively integrated various thinking strategies, including divergent thinking, into regular classroom lessons, resulted in students becoming more adept at solving puzzles creatively.
Okay.
An Italian study that focused on encouraging the use of positive narrative techniques in storytelling led to children being rated as more creative in their narrative abilities.
Nice.
And an intervention in Israel that involved middle school students practicing perspective taking within the context of media consumption led to a significant improvement in their divergent thinking skills.
Those are some really concrete examples of how schools can intentionally cultivate creativity. But these findings also raise some intriguing longer-term questions, don't they? Like, do these positive effects stick around?
That's a great question.
And do these interventions impact divergent and convergent thinking in the same way? Or is it mostly one type?
Exactly. We still need more longitudinal research to understand the lasting impact of these interventions. That's a big gap.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed, the developmental trajectories of convergent and divergent thinking might differ, so what works well for one might not be as effective for the other. Plus, we still need to really disentangle the causal relationship.
Right, the chicken or the egg.
Precisely. Does engaging in these types of school experiences directly lead to increases in creativity, or are there other underlying factors at play? These are important avenues for future research to explore.
Now, a particularly insightful section of the review focuses on the teacher's perspective. Because even with the best classroom designs and activities, if teachers don't recognize and maybe even value creative thinking in their students, that could be a significant barrier, right?
You've hit upon a crucial point there. The research indicates that teachers often face challenges in accurately identifying creative children.
Really?
Yeah, and their assessments of students' creativity frequently don't align well with the results of objective creativity tests, or even with how students perceive their own creativity.
That's quite surprising. You'd sort of assume that teachers, being on the front lines of education, would be pretty adept at spotting those creative sparks.
One would think so, but there seems to be a notable disconnect. Some studies have even found that teachers might perceive creative students as disruptive or challenging in the classroom.
Oh, dear.
And paradoxically, they might actually underestimate the creative thinking abilities, problem-solving skills, and even independence of students who score highly on creativity assessments.
That's almost the exact opposite of what you'd expect. What might be contributing to this discrepancy in perception? Is it just misinterpreting behavior?
Several factors seem to be at play. One potential issue is that teachers might hold a different implicit understanding of creativity compared to researchers.
How so?
Well, while researchers often emphasize both novelty and usefulness, teachers might primarily focus on the novelty aspect, perhaps overlooking the value and appropriateness of a student's ideas. Is it practical? Does it fit?
Ah, okay. So they might see quirky, but not necessarily creative in the useful sense.
Possibly. There's also some evidence suggesting that teachers might view certain characteristics often associated with creativity, like impulsivity or a tendency to question norms as negative behavioral traits in the classroom context, things that make managing a class harder.
That presents a real challenge then. If teachers hold these kinds of views, maybe unconsciously, it's difficult to see how they can effectively encourage and nurture creative thinking.
Exactly. Research suggests that teachers might inadvertently dismiss creative questions posed by students, or they might favor responses that adhere strictly to the curriculum, rather than those that demonstrate originality or explore alternative perspectives, especially with divergent thinking.
Hmm.
This could inadvertently signal to students that creative exploration isn't valued, especially when it deviates from the expected answers. Stay inside the lines, sort of.
So what can be done to bridge this gap? It sounds like equipping teachers with a better understanding of what creativity actually looks like in a student is essential.
It absolutely is. And the positive news is that research shows that professional development and training specifically designed to enhance teachers' understanding and appreciation of creativity can have a significant impact.
It's good to hear.
This type of training can help shift their perspective from viewing creativity as some innate talent possessed by only a few, the artistic type, to recognizing it as a set of skills that can be developed in all children. Furthermore, some studies have found that teacher training programs grounded in creativity research can actually lead to measurable improvements in their students' divergent thinking abilities.
That's really encouraging. It implies that with the right support and education, teachers can become powerful catalysts for fostering creativity within the classroom rather than potential roadblocks.
Precisely. It highlights that while the inherent school environment might have some influence, actively empowering teachers with the knowledge and tools to understand, identify, and nurture creativity can lead to a much more significant positive impact on students' creative development.
Okay, let's delve into another intriguing and somewhat controversial area. This notion of developmental slumps in creativity, particularly the widely discussed fourth grade slump, identified by Torrance way back.
Ah, yes, the fourth
Oh,
grade
yeah.
slump. This is indeed a topic that has generated a lot of discussion and, well, ongoing debate. Torrance's early research pointed to a noticeable decline in children's divergent thinking abilities around the age of 9 or 10.
Uh-huh.
And he observed this across various cultural contexts. This fourth grade slump concept really spurred a significant body of research aimed at understanding how creativity unfolds throughout childhood.
And there were several theories proposed to explain these supposed slumps, right? Many of which link them to transitions within the school system and increasing social pressures to conform.
Exactly. Torrance himself suggested that these dips in creativity might coincide with significant school transitions, like moving from elementary to middle school, where there are often increased expectations for adherence to rules and social norms.
Fitting in becomes more important.
Kind of. The idea was that expressing individuality might be less valued during these periods of adjustment. Some later research also pointed to the heightened desire for peer acceptance during adolescence as a potential factor contributing to declines in certain aspects of creativity, like originality.
But the evidence supporting these widespread developmental slumps and their direct link to school experiences isn't entirely consistent across all studies, is it? It feels like I've heard conflicting things.
That's a crucial point to acknowledge. You're right. Many subsequent studies haven't found clear and consistent evidence of these universal creativity slumps.
Hmm.
This could be partly attributed to variations in how creativity is defined and measured across different research studies, that measurement issue again.
Yeah, that keeps coming up.
It does. Additionally, the timing of some of these alleged slumps, like the fourth grade one, doesn't always neatly align with major shifts in educational systems or cultural contexts across different regions. It's not universal.
And what about the possibility that these apparent slumps might not be due to the school environment at all, but maybe reflect natural shifts in cognitive development as kids mature?
Some researchers have proposed exactly that these potential dips in creativity could have roots in cognitive or even biological developmental processes, rather than being solely caused by educational factors.
Like what?
For instance, there's the theory of a cognitive trade-off during middle childhood, suggesting that as other cognitive abilities like logical reasoning and focused attention develop and become stronger, divergent thinking might temporarily become less prominent, sort of making way for other skills.
An interesting trade-off idea.
Others have speculated about the role of prefrontal cortex maturation, but honestly, the empirical evidence strongly supporting these purely developmental explanations is still somewhat limited.
Okay. And it seems like the majority of this discussion around creativity slumps has focused on divergent thinking. What about convergent thinking? Do we see similar patterns of decline there?
That's an excellent question, and the answer is, well, there's considerably less research examining the developmental trajectory of convergent thinking and whether similar slumps occur.
Ah,
The limited number of studies that have investigated this, mostly in European children, have generally not found evidence of any significant slumps in convergent thinking abilities during childhood.
that's an interesting divergence itself. So, if there are any consistent dips in creativity, they seem to be more specific to the divergent thinking domain. Why might that be? Any theories?
One plausible explanation put forth by researchers is that early formal schooling often places a greater emphasis on skills related to convergent thinking,
Mm.
identifying the single correct answer to a problem.
Right, standard tests often focus on that.
Exactly. Compared to divergent thinking, which involves generating multiple possibilities, this early and consistent focus on convergent skills might explain the lack of observed slumps in that area. It gets practiced more, maybe.
That makes intuitive sense.
But as with many aspects of this complex relationship, more research is needed to further explore and validate these hypotheses. We're still figuring it out.
Now, shifting our focus to a different lens, the review dedicates attention to comparing creativity levels in students attending different types of schools, specifically contrasting mainstream education with alternative educational philosophies like Montessori and Steiner.
Yes, this area of research offers a really unique opportunity to gain insights into how different pedagogical approaches and learning environments might differentially impact creative thinking.
Because they're set up quite differently.
Very differently. Montessori and Steiner schools, while representing a smaller segment of the educational landscape, are often perceived as prioritizing creative expression and imaginative exploration, perhaps to a greater extent than traditional mainstream schools, which typically adhere to more standardized curricula and assessment methods.
And what are the general findings when researchers actually compare the creative abilities of students in these different educational settings? Is there a clear pattern?
Well, the overall trend observed in the research does suggest that children attending mainstream schools tend to demonstrate lower levels of creative skills compared to their peers in Montessori or Steiner schools.
Oh, really? Lower? Could you share some specific examples of these findings?
Certainly. A study conducted in the UK found that younger children in Steiner schools produce more creative drawings when asked to complete incomplete visual figures compared to children in both Montessori and mainstream schools.
Okay.
On that specific task, Montessori and mainstream kids performed similarly. The researchers hypothesized that this difference might be attributed to the greater emphasis placed on imagination, artistic expression, and pretend play within the Steiner educational philosophy.
That's a compelling finding. What about comparisons involving Montessori education specifically?
Several studies, particularly those conducted in Switzerland and France, have indicated that Montessori students tend to outperform their counterparts in mainstream schools on various measures of both figural, that's drawing-based divergent and convergent thinking.
Both types. Interesting.
Yes, even after controlling for differences in intelligence. One Swiss study even found that Montessori students exhibited greater flexibility in their semantic network structures, basically, a greater ability to connect seemingly disparate concepts, which is a hallmark of creative thinking.
So it appears that these alternative educational approaches might indeed be more effective in nurturing certain aspects of creativity. What are some of the potential underlying reasons for these observed differences? Why might that be?
Several potential factors have been proposed. One prominent idea is that the less structured and often less pressure-intensive environments found in Montessori and Steiner schools, fewer formal assessments, grades, homework in the early years, might afford children more freedom.
Freedom to explore.
Yeah, freedom to explore their interests and creative impulses without the fear of judgment. Additionally, the greater emphasis on hands-on learning, self-directed exploration, and diverse social interactions, like peer tutoring and multi-age classrooms common in these settings, could play a significant role.
Right, those mixed age groups are a key feature.
They are. And the smaller class sizes generally, plus the explicit encouragement of imagination and artistic endeavors, particularly in Steiner schools, are also thought to be contributing factors.
But it's important to keep in mind that this is still an evolving area of research, isn't it? We can't just say alternative is always better for creativity.
Absolutely not. More rigorous research is needed to definitively establish these findings and to fully understand the specific mechanisms through which these different educational approaches might be impacting creative development.
Yeah, what exactly is making the difference?
Exactly. Future studies could aim to isolate the specific pedagogical elements. Is it the social interactions, the assessment practices, the curriculum content that are most influential? Furthermore, given that many studies have focused on figural or drawing measures of creativity, more research using verbal measures is needed for a more comprehensive picture.
Good point.
And as we touched on earlier, it's also possible that parental factors like a pre-existing inclination towards creativity among parents who choose alternative education for their children could play a role and need to be carefully considered in future research. Self-selection bias.
That's a crucial point about potential confounding factors. It's not always easy to disentangle the precise impact of the school environment itself from, say, the home environment or parental choices.
Precisely. However, this growing body of research certainly raises important questions for us to consider about the potential benefits and drawbacks of different educational philosophies when it comes to fostering creative potential in children. It gives us things to think about.
Now let's broaden our perspective even further. The review makes a really strong case for considering the impact of cultural and educational diversity when studying creativity, moving beyond predominantly Western-centric research.
This is an absolutely critical point. A significant portion of our understanding of creativity and its relationship with education is based on research conducted in, well, Western cultural contexts. Weird populations, as they say.
Right.
But given the vast array of schooling systems, teaching methodologies, available resources across the globe, examining diverse populations can provide us with a much richer and more nuanced understanding of this complex interplay.
And it's not just about the practical aspects of schooling, like resources, but also about how the very concept of creativity is understood and valued in different cultural contexts, isn't it?
Exactly. There are some fundamental differences in how creativity is conceptualized, say, in Eastern versus Western cultures.
Like what?
Western cultures tend to highly value novelty, originality, generating ideas that are significantly different from existing ones. Think disruption.
Okay.
In contrast, Eastern cultures often place a greater emphasis on the usefulness and practicality of creative ideas, as well as their ability to contribute to social harmony and integrate with existing knowledge frameworks. More refinement, maybe?
Interesting distinction.
Furthermore, there could be cultural differences in whether creativity is primarily viewed as an individual attribute or a more collective, team-oriented process.
Those differing cultural perspectives could certainly influence how creativity is encouraged or maybe discouraged and assessed within educational settings in different parts of the world. Were there any specific cross-cultural studies highlighted in the review that shed light on this?
Yes, several fascinating cross-cultural comparisons were discussed. One study found that Chinese children in Hong Kong actually outperformed French children on a range of creativity measures.
Really? Outperformed?
Yes, a finding that researchers linked to curriculum reforms implemented in Hong Kong that specifically aimed to cultivate creative thinking skills. So policy can matter.
Wow, okay.
Another study comparing German and Chinese children revealed different strengths in divergent thinking, depending on the domain. German children showed greater strength in practical, everyday problem solving, while Chinese children excelled in more academic domains like mathematics.
So the focus of the culture or education system might shape where creativity flourishes.
It suggests that, yes, the specific focus and priorities within a culture's educational system can significantly shape how creativity manifests.
And it's not just about comparing East and West, is it? The review also highlighted research from some unique educational contexts in other regions, Africa, South America.
Absolutely. We saw examples from Rwanda, where a competence-based curriculum designed to foster skills like problem-solving and creativity was associated with increased cognitive flexibility in children. In Brazil, researchers found a positive correlation between academic grades and figural divergent thinking, And children attending private schools reported experiencing a more creative classroom environment compared to those in public schools, perhaps due to resources or class size.
Okay.
A study conducted in Cameroon, where schools tend to have a more traditional authoritarian structure, suggested that this type of environment might hinder the development of divergent thinking compared to the less hierarchical educational environment observed in Germany.
Structure versus freedom again, maybe?
Possibly. And perhaps one of the most thought-provoking findings was regarding children with very limited exposure to formal schooling.
Yes, that really caught my eye. What did they find there?
Well, one study involving homeless children in Bolivia who had very limited formal education found that they actually scored higher on certain measures of divergent thinking compared to children from similar socioeconomic backgrounds who attended school more regularly.
Higher, wow. How did they explain that?
The researchers proposed that the daily challenges and problem-solving demands inherent in their lives, like finding food and shelter, might have fostered these divergent thinking skills out of necessity. Real-world creativity.
Makes sense. Survival requires ingenuity.
Exactly. Similarly, research with Bayaka children in the Congo, who have limited formal schooling, demonstrated remarkable creativity in natural settings, even if they didn't perform as well on standardized, sort of artificial, experimental creativity tasks.
That really makes you reconsider our traditional notions of what constitutes creativity and how it develops, doesn't it? Especially in different life contexts.
It does indeed. There's this concept called the hidden talents framework, which suggests that adversity and the need to adapt to challenging circumstances can actually enhance certain abilities like practical creativity that might not be readily captured by traditional school-based assessments.
So struggling in school doesn't necessarily mean you lack creative potential.
Not at all. It might instead reflect a difficulty with the specific symbolic systems and knowledge domains emphasized in formal education. This really underscores the critical need for future research to include diverse populations and to employ methodological approaches that are sensitive to different cultural contexts and life experiences. Ecological validity, basically.
Right. And detailed reporting is key.
Absolutely. The importance of thoroughly documenting the educational and cultural backgrounds of study participants cannot be overstated if we want to make sense of these findings.
So as we begin to weave together all these different threads of research we've explored, what are some of the key overarching connections and insights that really stand out? How does it all link up?
Well, what's particularly illuminating is how seemingly disparate findings can actually start to converge.
Yeah.
The creativity observed in children with limited formal schooling and those in alternative educational settings, both environments often emphasizing less structured learning and more real-world problem-solving, seems to highlight the potential benefits of diverse experiences and perhaps a reduced emphasis on rote memorization.
Okay, so less structure, more real-world problems seems like a theme.
It could be. Similarly, the effectiveness of creativity-focused programs within mainstream schools that incorporate things like peer collaboration and perspective-taking, those mirror some of the common pedagogical practices found in alternative education models.
Ah, so we can bring some of that into mainstream
It
settings.
seems so. And the challenges we see with some teachers in mainstream schools struggling to recognize and value creativity, that contrasts quite sharply with the specialized training and often more holistic understanding of child development among teachers in alternative educational systems.
Right, the teacher training aspect.
Exactly. And the fact that targeted teacher training in mainstream schools can lead to improvements in their ability to identify and foster creativity further underscores the importance of teacher preparation and ongoing professional development. It's learnable.
Yeah.
Even the less consistent evidence for widespread creativity slumps, particularly in certain domains, might be linked back to the stronger emphasis on verbal and analytical skills in traditional schooling. Skills which also tend to have a more direct and measurable connection to academic achievement as we typically assess it.
So maybe school is boosting certain types of thinking, just not always the divergent kind.
That could be part of it. Ultimately, it becomes clear that the relationship between creativity and education is a highly dynamic and multifaceted phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's shaped by a complex interplay of learning environments, teaching methodologies, cultural values, and even how we choose to define and measure creativity itself.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close for you, our listener, what are the most significant takeaways that you should be reflecting on? What's the bottom line, if there is one?
Well, I think the research paints a rich and intricate picture, moving far beyond simplistic pronouncements like, schools kill creativity. It's just not that simple.
Okay.
It reveals that while schools certainly can have a positive influence on creativity through intentional pedagogical approaches, specific interventions, and supportive learning environments,
Mm-hmm.
alternative educational models, and even in some unique contexts, a lack of traditional schooling can also foster remarkable creative abilities, often by providing different kinds of problem-solving opportunities and emphasizing different skills.
Right. So context matters hugely.
Hugely. And furthermore, the understanding, appreciation, and ongoing training of teachers consistently emerge as absolutely crucial factors in nurturing creative potential within any educational setting. Teachers are key.
Okay. And here's maybe a final, perhaps provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. Given this diverse array of findings, what might be the single most crucial element in nurturing your own creative potential or that of a child you care about?
Good question.
Is it a highly structured learning environment or more open-ended freedom? Is it formal lessons focused on specific skills or maybe immersion in real-world problem solving? And how can you consciously cultivate that crucial element in your own life and learning journey moving forward? Maybe take a moment to reflect on your own educational experiences and the learning approaches you currently embrace.
Yeah, and this deep dive, like any good exploration, is really just the beginning, isn't it? We encourage you to continue delving into the aspects that have sparked your curiosity, whether that's exploring different educational philosophies, investigating the impact of teacher training initiatives, or considering how cultural contexts shape our understanding and development of creativity. There's a wealth of fascinating information out there waiting to be discovered.